launch of Creatively Minded and Young. So as Harriet said, my name is Vicky Amedemi, and I'm the chair of the Foundation's Arts Committee. As many of you know, the Bearing Foundation is an independent foundation which protects and advances human rights and promotes inclusion. And we believe that the role of a strong, independent civil society people experiencing discrimination and disadvantage, and we act strategically to tackle the root causes of injustice and inequality. Creatively Minded and Young is the second report from the Foundation connected with our new focus, which is on arts activity with people with mental health problems. And the programme began with a mapping study of arts and mental health activity in the UK called Creatively Minded, which was compiled by David Cutler. We also launched the first round of funding this year in July 2020. Creatively Minded and Young develops the initial research, focusing on the picture for children and young people. And the report identified around 20 plus organisations and projects working with children and or young people across the UK. And of course, we recognise that not all of the activity that's happening in the UK is represented in this report. There are many more organisations doing brilliant and important work that we did not meet in this initial investigation. And we look forward to discovering and engaging more with groups as we develop our knowledge and understanding of this area of work. The aim of this new collection is to have a series of case studies that showcase some of the great work that's happening. And we hope by sharing these case studies, we not only spread some inspiring ideas and some good practice, but there's also the beginning of a conversation or the continuation of a conversation about how arts can be used to more support the mental health and well-being of children and young people. So before we started today, I just wanted to say thank you to all of those that contributed to the case studies, and thank you to our research officer, Harriet Lowe, for compiling this brilliant report. We have the pleasure today of welcoming a few of those contributors to speak about the work that they do. And the format of today will be 5 presentations, followed by around 30 minutes at the end for questions and discussions. And I hope that today will be an informative and productive session. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first presenter. So Anya Wallace from Fresh Minds in Northern Ireland. And Anya, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk about your work.
Hello everyone, it's really lovely to be here, and if it's okay with you, I'll share screen and maybe take you through a little presentation that I've prepared. We have a few minutes, if that's all right. So I'm going to just share the screen. Fabulous. And there we go. So hi, I'm Anya from Fresh Minds Education, and I'm based in Northern Ireland and working really right across Northern Ireland, and have been doing for, well, all of my working life, but Fresh Minds Education has been up and running for about 15 years now. And really we're creating hope, hopefully, for a calmer, kinder and healthier world. And I think in Northern Ireland and probably in the rest of the world, that's what we are all aiming for. As a peace worker and a youth worker, I used to work, I guess, in cross-community contexts and in interface areas. So my work started off with looking and seeking for peace in our land for our people. And I realized very quickly early on in my work, that unless we could have peace on the inside, we could never have peace on the outside. So I learned very, very, very quickly that mental health work and working with our emotional health was my roadmap to peace, and that's the work that I should be doing. My background is in drama. I'm a drama practitioner, but I'm also a mental health practitioner, a youth worker and therapist. So it's lovely to be here and lovely to be bringing our gorgeous program called Fresh Young Artists to the awareness of everyone who is here today. So we have been really lucky to be able to bring Fresh Young Artists out into the community in Northern Ireland due to funding that we received through the Public Health Agency and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. It has made a real difference to be supported. And I think that when, in talking about the project, context is everything. And I thought I would flag up very quickly that when we're working with children and young people in relation to their mental health, the connection with trauma is so clear and evidence-based now that we recognise that when we're working with children and young people who are experiencing mental ill health or poor mental health concerns, that potentially trauma is showing itself to us, and that it could be any layer of trauma that is embodied within that child or young person's being. So that trauma could be something that's been inherited from a very long time ago. It could be ancestral trauma, inherited trauma. It could be trauma as a consequence of the world that they have been born into, so their planetary experience. It could be cultural trauma. So again, in Northern Ireland, that's particularly relevant because of our history in relation to, I guess, famine, colonialism, and for the last very long time, civil war. And, since 1998 and the peace agreement, we have definitely been a land in transition and a people in transition. And transition in itself brings along its own layers of trauma, because transition is complex, can be complicated. Transition can hurt. Transition is very much about bringing balance or rebalancing. Transition involves power struggles, and transition can bring dis-ease in itself. So we've seen post-conflict increased levels of mental health. The protection mechanisms that would have been there for us as a society during our conflict has been taken away. And so we're seeing increased levels of mental health, increased levels of adults and young people using medication for pain relief in Northern Ireland, increased levels of suicide. So we're seeing the fallout of our history showing up now in generations. And they will have embodied an awful lot of that experience within their bodies, but maybe that experience wasn't theirs, and maybe that's their mother's experience or their grandparents' experience or their cultural experience, and they are increasingly, dysregulated. And very often when we speak with young people directly and we ask them why, they say, we don't know. And they don't know because it's not necessarily like their lived experience. As I say, it could be their inherited experience. It could be something that is moving through them at a conscious or an unconscious level. So all of this is really important, because when we're working with young people in relation to their mental health through our arts projects, we are really recognizing that they are transitional characters and that they are showing up for healing, for repair, and for change. They are really wanting to rewrite their story. And this is where artwork and the arts really have amazing strengths, because the arts creates opportunities for young people to connect with their story, to connect with their truth, to connect with their identity, to connect with their unconscious, and to bring that into awareness and to rewrite the narrative so it doesn't continue to recycle generation after generation. So what might seem on the outset like pretty work, music, murals, artwork, beautiful work, entertaining work, is actually deeply impactful and hugely needed and massively urgent here in Northern Ireland, and not just for Northern Ireland. As our world grows into chaos, arts can particularly play a huge role in helping us rewrite our narratives for the future. We get to decide what it is that we recycle on generation after generation, but it really does start with connecting with who you are. So our program is called Fresh Young Artists. It's for young people who are 12 to 18. It's a collaboration between young people, mental health practitioners and artists. So we would train our artists up in mental health practices, and we would train our mental health practitioners in art processes. And that really works. That team and that collective and that collaborative way of working together really works. We work with a wide range of artists, from musicians through to visual artists, drama practitioners. We're really working project by project to meet young people's needs. So we're very fluid with the art methodologies and the artists that we're working with, because we're really trying to respond to the needs of the young people, or what might engage or work for specific groups of young people. And all young people are so diverse, and we like to listen to them and hear what might work for them. So our program is all about improving their resilience and improving their mental health outcomes, and giving them voice. It's based upon the Amber approach. So all of our work is based upon the Amber approach. That's our resilience model for mental health. And put most simply, that's anchor, move, breathe, express, and relax. And we have 14 theories behind each of those pieces of work. But put most simply, the Amber approach is about us really working to develop connection with the young people that we're working with. So from adult to young person, from young person to adult, and from young person to young person. So that the connection, the relationship is the starting point from which anything can happen. In the absence of relationship, we can't have resilience. We've got to connect with the heart in order to gain access to the mind. So we can't engage that prefrontal cortex unless we have really connected with the heartbeat of the human beings in front of us, and they have connected with ours. So we literally have to love what we do in order to be able to achieve our outcomes. We address themes around mental health. So that's where the mental health is really broad. It's everything from poverty to, what's happening in the planet, right through to the issues like, or to the needs that people experience in terms of self-soothing. So people might need to talk about their needs in relation to self-harming, use of drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. Mental health is life. Mental health is everything. So these things are able to come through our program, and we teach strategies. So we teach strategies for people to engage with themselves and to be able to self-regulate themselves. So really, I guess, our Fresh Young Artist program is an applied creative and mental health methodology, put most simply. The impacts that we've noticed is reduction in self-harm, suicidal ideation, negative thought patterns, depressive episodes, and a sense of feeling stuck. And I think that one is really important, because when we feel empowered to unstick ourselves, anything and everything becomes possible. And we've also seen evidence base of an increase where young people have reported an increase in their ability to use strategies to help them cope. Courage, they have reported an increase in courage to reach out for support, a sense of belonging. So this work of actually connecting with who I really am, but not just the life I was born into, but the life that came before me, and all of that really helps young people feel like they get a sense of where they belong and who they are and where they fit in the world. They report more willingness to try, more likely to problem solve, and better able to bounce back after the hardships, or as we would talk about, the storms in life that they are leaning into and working through every day. We're seeing an increase in feelings of joy, and importantly, optimism along with that, and an increase in self-expression and young people finding their voice. We've had loads of on-scene outcomes as well. So we have young people have developed lots of positive products. We've started working with them as our young consultants, and they have contributed to, like, for example, our music album that's now embedded in all of our programs that reaches up to 4,000 young people every year. So their sounds that they've created are reaching, and their words are reaching, thousands of other young people. And during lockdown, we worked with them to create mental health responses to COVID. So we brought them back in online. They worked with artists again, and together they created effectively workshops in a box, and those workshops were sent out to over 2,000 children that were shielded in Northern Ireland, children and young people that were shielded over the COVID lockdown. And the really beautiful thing about this is that it's not just products. They created website platforms where, you know, children and young people could click on scan codes and actually connect with the young people who created all of the products with the artists that were in there. So they have really engaged not just with the project, but with us as an organisation. What next? We would love to see other practitioners having the opportunity to train in our methodologies. We'd love to share what we have learned with other people across the world, and we'd love to make more of an impact across Northern Ireland by helping to make this more available to more young people, to help make the mental health training more available to more artists, the arts processes more available to more mental health practitioners. We have worked with NUI Maynooth in the past in creating the NUI Youth and Arts Certificate, so we would like to see mental health and arts certificate developed for our practitioners. And ultimately, you know, it just comes back to the mission. We want to just make this place a better place for us all. So I think that's my time. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Anya. That was a really powerful presentation of the impact on arts interventions on trauma. Thank you so much. I'm going to rattle on and jump to Amy Whittlesea from Hampshire Culture Trust and Helen Dove from the Hampshire Children and Adolescents Mental Health Services, who are partners in a project, the ICE project. Can I bring you in to share your case study with the group?
Of course, yeah. Let me just again share my screen. So you should all be able to see my presentation, fingers crossed. Great, thank you. Okay, Helen, are you all right to kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm Helen Dove. I'm the Innovations and Participation Manager for Hampshire CAMS, that's Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services.
Yes, and I'm Amy Whittlesea, Cultural Engagement Coordinator for Health and Wellbeing for Hampshire Cultural Trust. We're really happy to have been asked to talk a little bit more today about our partnership programme, the ICE project. Our organisations have been working for a few years now, well, many years now, and this specific programme is in its 4th year currently. The ICE project is really kindly supported with investment from Artswork, the South East Bridge, Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust, and individual donors to Hampshire Cultural Trust. We all kind of set out with the joint aim and belief that participation in arts and cultural activity can have a positive impact on young people's mental health and emotional well-being.
Yeah, so we won't repeat what's in the report, but I'll run through a brief overview of what the ICE project is. So we engage with groups of young people in different artistic and creative projects. And for each project, there are 3 stages, obviously, which is the ICE. So I stands for Inspire, which is an inspiration point. This might be a relevant cultural visit or experience or activity, going to a gig, etc. The C part, the Create, is where the groups of young people work with high quality professional artists in various art forms to create the actual artwork. And then E, the Exchange, is where they get to showcase all the work that they've done, and that might be a performance, an exhibition, or online sharing of the work that's been created.
In the first and the kind of current phase of ICE, there are the 3 target groups that we seek to engage. So the first, as you can see, is young people referred directly through Hampshire CAMS. Young people who have been identified as at risk of developing mental health difficulties due to their circumstances, who are engaged through a really broad network of partner organisations. And the third is activity and promotion to the general public and young people in schools, and that's primary and secondary schools. Every young person who takes part in the project has a an opportunity to gain an arts award at an appropriate level. And the project takes place in a really wide variety of settings. So it could be that the projects take place in Hampshire Cultural Trust venues. It could be that we're using Hampshire arts venues, so that could be galleries or other theatre spaces. They also take place in CAMHS clinics and in youth centres where partner organisations normally do their work. So we're really proud to say that the project is truly county-wide in that respect.
So why do we believe our collaboration works? There's often talk about the NHS and particularly CAMHS services being really stretched with increasing need and under-resourcing, and that is absolutely the case. But this project aims to be preventative and proactive by linking our non-health settings to promote messages around healthy lifestyles and positive mental health. And Hampshire Cultural Trust is our specialist and cultural provider locally, and they've linked into a very wide and inspiring network of freelance artists in the county, and have also, as Amy's described, have got access to a lot of safe, creative environments to run the activities embedded in the community. And so this project works with local youth providers, schools as well, to ensure that we're adopting a really kind of joined up approach. And in this way, we can achieve much better and much stronger outcomes for the children and young people in our county, we believe.
So I've put some lovely quotes up on the screen that I hope you'll have a little bit of time to read through. But in terms of evaluation, we have developed a theory of change for the project, and we are researching and evaluating its impact. Our year 3 evaluation report is actually due in November, and I think all of our summary reports are on the Hampshire Cultural Trust website. So if you want to see them, they are all on there. The ICE project was funded for an initial period of 3 years. So for the last 5 or so months, we've been working together to develop our plans for the next phase of the project. So looking forward, we've identified an increased need to be working with direct CAMHS referrals, as well as keeping engagement with young people for longer. So after that kind of initial engagement opportunity, and a part of that is working out progression pathways. So that's what we're currently doing, is mapping what progression pathways are available to young people once they finish that initial opportunity. And we're also looking at peer support as part of that. We're also really hoping to develop the capacity in our HCT venues to provide opportunities for young people to access beyond the age of 18. So when they might be looking in that kind of tricky period with the transition to adult services, to, like I said, develop capacity for us to be able to support those young people as well. We are, I think, much like the sector as a whole at the moment, we're looking at staff training and support, as well as aiming to deliver longer term evidence of the project. So we are currently fundraising for the next phase now, with the hope that we will be able to resume our activity in the new year. It's really challenging, I think, to kind of try and summarise ICE in 6 or 7 minutes. But yes, we have a bit of a case study that Helen's going to read out in a little while. But I just thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of some of the projects that young people have been involved in this year. So some of the projects are young people from CAMHS have redesigned parts of CAMHS clinics to make them more inviting and welcoming for other young people. Participants from a bereavement charity have designed animations based on their experiences to share with other young people. Young carers groups have created dance, theatre and poetry pieces to share based on themes that are important to them. CAMHS participants and looked after young people have written personal songs, had them recorded, and other groups have experienced art journaling, photography, filmmaking, printing, and a lot more. So we're really proud of the breadth of art forms and talented artists that we've been working with over the last 3 years. It really does enable the project to be truly responsive to what young people want to get involved in, and that's really about that kind of co-development of projects with young people, and allows us to do that really well, I think. So yes, Helen's going to finish up, I think, with a short story of change from one of our participants.
So I'm going to read you a quote in a sec. And this quote came to us recently from a young person who got in touch. And she first engaged with our programme back in, 2017. And she came to the first arts activity day she attended, she was completely silent. She hardly made any eye contact. And actually it was the first time she'd been out of the house for 4 months and had been not attending school for a year. And what we saw over her journey through that program, that photography program, was that she slowly relaxed and started to open up, and she actually started to enjoy herself. And after participating in our photography course, she was then involved in putting the artwork on display in an exhibition, and then she progressed on to be a volunteer in the Arts Centre, and then finally took on a creative apprenticeship with another cultural organisation. And she's told us since she's been motivated to take her GCSE in maths and her driving test in her own time. And for her, that was a real positive engagement in a cultural venue, which led from one thing to another, and has really helped her with her connection and with her creativity and her local community. And she says it's hugely impacted her health and well-being. So what she would said is, it's been fantastic to work with you, and I've got so much more out of the ICE project than I could think you could ever know. It really changed my life and continues to do so, because nearly everything I do today has come either directly or indirectly from it. So thank you.
So that's just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the ICE project. I will thank you very much for listening, and we'll gladly take some questions on that in the Q&A.
Thank you, Amy and Helen. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions that come up in the Q&A about your partnership. It sounds like a really powerful and equal one. I just want to bring everybody in the webinar's attention to the Q&A box. So at the end of this session, at the end of the 5 presentations, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. So please do start popping your questions into that Q&A box. Okay, I think we're going to go to our next presenter now. I'm going to welcome Rod Kippen from Horsfall Centre, based at 42nd Street in Manchester.
Thank you very much. I'll just get my screen set up. Let's have a look. Reading view. Thank you. Is that good? Fantastic. Thank you very much. My name is Rod Kippen. I'm a creative producer at the Horsfall Gallery up in Manchester. I'm part of 42nd Street, which is Manchester-based, Greater Manchester-based mental health charity working with young people between 13 and 25. Most of the staff at 42nd Street are face-to-face counsellors. So in the building on the right, that's the space, which has now been painted through our young people and working with some professional artists. And the main work of 42nd Street is, as I say, face-to-face work. We've got about 40 staff doing various modes of counselling with young people in the building, also in schools and in community settings. And the Horsfall was developed from an idea a young person had when the building became available next door, that she felt we should be doing more about art. So we've created the Horsfall as a gallery and much more as a creative space in the last year while I've been there, supporting young people to use creativity around various issues that they're facing. So referral to 42nd Street can be through young people themselves, through teachers, GPs, nurses, youth workers, social workers, so they can refer in. Then what's really offered to the young people is a range of different ways that they want to engage. So different kind of person-centered approaches, and much more of a kind of group work basis has started to happen at 42nd Street. We run 14 different groups for young people. We have a women's group, we have an LGBTQ plus group, and we have 3 creative groups. So we're looking much more around kind of group work as being a benefit to young people. Also, unfortunately, we do have a waiting list in some areas of Greater Manchester, but young people can access the groups when they're on the waiting list, when they're receiving support, or after they've received support. And we try and offer things for anyone on any kind of level of ability and confidence, coming into 42nd Street. So referrals will come into us, and what we do is a lot around nurturing of those young people. A lot of young people are coming in with anxiety, depression and loneliness, And that's mostly the greatest presenting feature is anxiety for our young people. So young people may have other stuff going on for them, but they're incredibly anxious coming into the group space. I expect them to take part in art activities and project work. So lots of work, and I'd say our main push is around nurturing young people. So what we do if there's a young person interested in creative work at the Horsfall is we support them with we have a mental health practitioner works with on all our group works, and they'll start a relationship with that young person, welcoming them into the space, get to know them a little bit. And what's been really successful, which isn't part of our funding, but which I feel is really critical to supporting young people into arts-based project work, is we have a drop-in. And the drop-in allows young people to come to the space, to stay as long as they want, to come each week or whenever they want, or before projects or after projects. And it's just where we set out lots of arts materials. We have a mental health practitioner there. We encourage them to get involved in creating as well. And what it is, it's offered a really diverse group of young people to come together without the pressures. So they can come and they can just work on their own work and share it or not share it. And it's been really crucial to kind of developing their kind of confidence. We've had one young person came for a year and now she's taking part in a group piece. And I think it's so important just to allow these free space. It's almost like an open youth access. We don't ask too much of them. It's not evaluated. You don't have to fill a form in. We have some knowledge about the young people because of 42nd Street young people. And I just feel like that's so what the young people with anxiety are so after. I think you get some really interesting conversations happening. Those who work in the arts will know that sometimes the art is activity, but the conversations that go on are vital to it. You know, we allow space, we give this permission to create in that time. And I think a lot of our young people have, you know, it's really interesting that we'll have young people, because it's 13 to 25, we'll talk about their education. You might hear someone talk about college while another person's talk about school. And there's kind of self-support and peer support within that. And also I think for those that are speaking in the group, they're in a group that is talking, so they're overhearing conversations. So I think that's been really crucial for us, and it's a really thing I'd like to kind of analyse a bit more really. But it does lead on, we do have other groups as well, so that's our kind of drop-in, which is a great way in, where they get to know the staff and the space, because as it was said earlier, it's all relationship based about young people's support. We then run groups running bigger projects. So we painted the front of the building. That was a project for the under 18s. We're doing a theatre piece or a kind of youth voice piece at the moment. And we're doing another piece where we link one artist with one young person, which is kind of worked through COVID, because it's kind of, they can start to meet in twos soon. And also it's supporting more local artists that are young, and we like to support artists with their own mental health. We do mental health training for artists, which supports artists to be aware of. I think there's a real concern when young people raise mental health to professionals that there's a bit of a panic goes on, and we try and support them around that. And also support artists that are supporting, quite often asked to support those young people that have been through the most trauma. You know, quite often it's pupil referral units that have artists in, and we want to support artists within that, managing that. How do they manage that? We've kind of unpicked it. So we've looked at the young people's use of creativity. That's what I've been really interested in doing with the young people. And there's something about space. Sometimes because we're a mental health charity, there's a push that we would do work on mental health. And I think as an artist myself who's had mental health issues in the past, I think that's not always what you want to use your art for. I think that's might be something you use it for, but quite often we're using creativity to build up the other parts of our personalities and our kind of interest. So the drop-in is about space, just allowing space, and that kind of, you know, where young people say, oh, I didn't even realise 2 hours has passed. You know, they're just getting out of whatever else is going on for them. We do have young people and the artists, you'll all know about kind of reflection, the fact that art works in a very similar way to counselling, that when you speak to a counsellor, whatever's been running around in your head becomes externalised and you have a different relationship with it. And that's really important, I think, especially for those young people that have been through traumatic experiences. So we use a lot of journal work. They can reflect back and they can put it out there, and that could be cathartic, or that could be something they reflect back on, that they may feel they always feel this same way, but looking back on a journal will show that they felt different on different ways. And that really feeds into kind of voice, and we're doing much more on voice. 42nd Street as a organisation does lots of work to normalise mental health for young people, that teenage years do, you know, there is changes, biological changes which affect how we feel. But we also look at the societal pressures that young people are facing and how could young people have a voice in that. We've got lots of young people worried about the future, so climate change, unemployment, obviously with COVID. So there's lots of pressures on young people. And as was mentioned earlier, transitions are really difficult for young people. And young people between 13 and 25 go through the transitions from primary to secondary school, changes in relationships with home or with carers, changing kind of identity in terms of sexuality and gender, and changes into college, changes into work. All these areas of transition. So we did a bit of unpicking with that with Manchester Metropolitan University, looking at societal things. And as you all know as artists, that we could write a report on these issues, but if we make a piece of art that puts the decision makers in the shoes of the young person, of how they experience it. So we're doing much more unpicking that. We have lots of young people come to us and say they can't draw. I think our education system's encouraging people that it's technical. It's a technical skill. I'm really disappointed that, you know, past 12, young people just tell me that they can't do art. So we do lots of unpicking and lots of unpicking with other services that work with young people that have been through trauma. So children in care workers, you know, for them to have the confidence to use art with their young people. I think quite often they're put off from doing it, or young people don't get access to creative ways because the adult is put off. So do quite a bit of training, and we look off. We've got Dubuffet here and Picasso made during World War II. So we share all this work. Cy Twombly, you know, Basquiat, to show kids this is just a revelation that art can be something else. So we're doing lots of unpicking in terms of that. You'll know yourselves, we do mental health training for artists. Artists understand that this benefits young people. The evidence is there really, but we are having to constantly show it. And we do measure impact. We really set young people to set their own goals. We use simple wellbeing tools. We want to use, I always believe evaluation should be a process that's positive in itself for young people's wellbeing. So I really want to use, you know, for young people to reflect back on their journey, maybe through journals, maybe through the work they've created, and to use that to see that they were in one place and they're somewhere else now, and to see what they've come through. Because I know as a youth worker of many years is young people having an idea and realising it is hugely impactful. Or working with others to realise something is hugely impactful, because then they use that resource in the future. They go, I had that problem, or I wanted to highlight that issue. I did this work and I responded to it. And that comes up again and again. And above all, you know, in these times, we do need creativity, so young people to feel that creativity is important. We are working with I Thrive in Greater Manchester, and we're piloting a tool that would be okay for young people to use, facilitators to use, so it's not too onerous, and that mental health staff would understand as being beneficial to young people. So thank you. Sorry for the stumbling there. I really struggle on Zoom. I like to see people's faces, and everyone's faces disappeared, and I go into an existential crisis that nobody's there. So sorry about that. But I hope I picked it up, and I'm always willing. Please do get in touch if you want to speak to me about anything else, and I'll stay on for the questions later. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rod. We were right there with you all the way. We didn't disappear. I'm going to next go to Nick Briggs from Quench Arts, and keep filling up that question box. I'm sure there are lots of questions that are coming into your minds as we listen to these brilliant case studies.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I'm just going to share my screen as well, so just bear with me. Hope you can all see that okay. So yes, my name's Nick Briggs, and I'm one of the directors and co-founders of Quench Arts alongside Liz Viggers, and we set up Quench in 2012, and our vision is that everyone should have access to high quality participatory music opportunities. We have 4 main strands of activity, which are wellbeing, youth, early years and training. And today I'll be focusing on the work that we do within our wellbeing strand, especially with young people. And just to say that all of the projects that we do within this strand of activity focus on creative music making, encouraging participants to compose their own original music. So why do we believe that music is the best tool for this? So we firmly believe that the benefits of engaging in musical activities can have an impact upon all areas of life. Obviously, there's the enjoyment, the challenge and the sense of achievement you can gain when learning an instrument, playing or singing with others and composing your own music. But musical engagement can help develop a range of other life skills, social skills and communication skills, such as learning to work as a team, building your confidence and self-esteem, and learning the art of compromise. And our musical activities support participants to express their emotions and feelings constructively and help to build their self-identity. So now I'm going to just quickly whiz through the couple of projects that feature in the Bearing report. And the first one is our Wavelength project, which is a community-based programme for young people with mental health conditions aged 12 to 18 in Birmingham and Solihull. And Wavelength works with young people with a range of mental health diagnoses, from an early intervention basis right through to those who are being discharged from acute and forensic inpatient settings. So this project was originally funded 4 years ago by mainly by Youth Music, and it's now supported by BBC Children in Need. And we received referrals to the project from Forward Thinking Birmingham, which is a consortium including Birmingham Children's Hospital that runs the mental health provision for young people across Birmingham, and Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust, who is in charge of the provision for young people in Solihull. And we also obviously receive referrals from other organisations as well that work with vulnerable young people. We have 20 places available for young people each year, and the outcomes are on this slide, which relates to the Why Music slide that I just referred to. So moving on to the structure now, we have a team of 4 mental health first aid trained music leaders plus 2 peer mentors working on the project. And when we recruit the young people, we meet them first to find out about their musical interests and support needs, and then place them with the most appropriate music leader to work with them on a one-to-one basis. And then through these one-to-one sessions, we aim to build their confidence, musical and personal skills, to then work in groups, meeting other young people with similar experience through a shared interest. And also, which is quite important to note, to settle them into the group work, we have all 4 music leaders there so that they have somebody there that they know well in the session to support them. We also have a couple of social events each year to develop relationships with peers, and every year we do a gig to celebrate young people's achievements, and we produce a CD of the music created. So at the beginning of the project, we ask each individual to set their own goals for the year based on the 5 ways to wellbeing, and we run creative baseline activities which are based on a mixture of tools such as the short WEM webs, the Rosenberg self-esteem scale and youth music evaluation scales. This baseline fully engages the participants in charting their journey, getting them to think about their current situation and their hopes for the future. And these baselines are revisited at points throughout the year. And on this screen now, it just shows some of the outcome headlines from our activity last year. Obviously things like 91% of the young people showed an improvement in the statement, "I'm good at working in a team." And the PPP equals potential progression points, because sometimes we have young people marking themselves at the top of the scale, so there's no place for them to move to. So we find that that's quite a useful tool as well to use. But not just the statistics, we also gain feedback from parents, carers, support workers and music leaders to gain a more rounded picture of the impact the project has had on each individual. And we write case studies to give context, which we find personally more powerful than the statistics, as personal stories and journeys can be explained in much more detail. So that's the first project, which is the Wavelength project. And the second one that I'm going to just touch upon is our plugin project, which is a creative music and wellbeing programme for young people aged 12 to 25 who face barriers to music making due to being mental health inpatients or being unable to access our community-based provision. The settings we've worked in are the Parkview Clinic, which is a CAMHS ward, which is part of Birmingham Children's Hospital, the Mental Health Trust's Ardernley Forensic CAMHS unit and their Tamarind Men's Forensic Medium Secure site, the Woodbourne Priory, which is a private CAMHS hospital, and Forward Thinking Birmingham's Blakesley Centre, which isn't an inpatient unit, but a centre that works with young people that have additional needs as well as poor mental health, and they can't access community activities because of these other conditions that they may be experiencing. And in this project, we work with at least 30 people every year. So plugin is different to Wavelength in that it uses accessible music technology to develop skills and creativity. Participants often have reduced concentration due to the medication that they're on, which is why music technology can help you achieve some good results in a short amount of time, allowing them a sense of achievement, even if they can't stay in a session for very long. Plugin settings have weekly provision, and the artists in residence work there for 3 hours every week, and that consists of a lead music leader and a young emerging music leader as well. The project works on an individual basis with an aim to lead to some collaborative working, but as you can imagine, group sessions in these environments can be quite challenging with such poorly young people, and so progress in this is in a managed way. And also we invite other young musicians that are not in hospital from our Music Education Hub partner groups to inspire our participants by performing to them and actually having a chat to them as well, which is also helps them achieve an arts award at an appropriate level. So just quickly show you just a few outcome headlines as well from for the last project year, such as things like 82% of young people stating an improvement in being able to express their own thoughts and feelings through their own music making. This is certainly evidenced by the music they produced last year, which is available on our SoundCloud if anybody wants to have a listen. As many of the young people wrote songs around their mental health and the challenges they face. That's never something that we enforce upon them. They're very much able to write about anything at all, but this particular year, there's quite a few around their own mental health and challenges. So just that's a very brief run through. So as you can see, both projects are focused on similar outcomes to work towards building resilience, acceptance and supporting recovery. Our project networks help young people to keep themselves well beyond any initial crisis, and where possible, young people can move between the projects when they're discharged, aiding their transition. Also, when the young people reach adulthood, they can actually access our adult programme, which is called Musical Connections. So again, that aids that tricky time when young people are moving between adult and child and adult mental health services. So just now onto our hopes for the future are to reach and engage more young people in need of support. We're keen to develop our work and partnerships, potentially expanding to other local areas where there's need and demand. We also have plans to widen the age range of those that we are engaging, working on an early intervention basis with primary age children. And we're also developing a project to build attachment where parents might be at risk of or facing postnatal depression. So that's just obviously a quick whiz through our work, but if you want more information, that's our website, and it's got lots of other information on there, including videos from artists and video case studies, etc. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Nick. That was fantastic. And if you don't mind, it'd be fantastic if you could post those SoundCloud links in the chat so that people can access them. Fabulous. So our last presentation this morning before we go into some discussion and some questions is with Sarah Ecob from Venue Cymru. And they run the Create project with Conwy Trust in North Wales. So Sarah.
While I'm faffing around, I will just say that I am the head of service or general manager for the theatres and conference centres in Conwy County Borough Council. There we go, got there eventually. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. It's been amazing hearing of the project so far. Venue Cymru is one of the largest venues in Wales, and as a theatre and conference centre, we're really lucky that we have the highest quality theatre space, range of meeting and event rooms, and lots of staff with skills and experience to deliver a huge range of events. So we use all of that resource to benefit our communities. As part of the local authority, we have to deliver on the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act outcomes. But we know, as I'm sure everybody here today did, we knew long ago that the arts have huge benefits on well-being. So as such, we've always had a particular focus on delivering creative arts projects for young people on a long-term and sustained basis to deliver maximum benefit. In 2013, we set up the Conwy Arts Trust, whose mission statement is, "We believe in the power of the arts to change lives." The Trust has seen its vision in action through many projects, but perhaps none more so than Create, which is our project for young people experiencing mental health difficulties. It was established in 2014, and it was originally funded by the Arts Council of Wales, and since year 2 by BBC Children in Need. So as a charity, when we first set up the charity, we decided to look at ways in which we could make an impact on the growing number of young people experiencing emotional and mental health needs. We recognise that this vulnerable group of young people should not be given false starts, shouldn't be dealt with in a way that might make them feel good initially and then let them down, and that participants should be given time and space to grow. A really important key to our success has been collaborative working. The Conwy Arts Trust and Venue Cymru joined forces with CAMS and with the Conwy Council Social Services. And with CAMS, we developed a pathway for access that involves referral from a mental health practitioner, strengths and difficulties questionnaires that potential participants undertake, close working with CAMS throughout, and a clear focus on the needs and wishes of the young person. So once the young person has been accepted onto the group, they meet the leaders, and then they join one of our groups, each of which meets fortnightly. The session each week starts with dinner. We provide healthy food and everyone sits around a table together to eat. This is actually really quite challenging for many of the young people initially. However, it has become one of the most powerful aspects of the work that we do, with people sharing information and stories about the week, reconnecting and understanding that this is a table where people will not judge them or criticise them, but who support and understand them. It sets the group up ready to share in creative activities. So following the food, the young people engage in creative activities which vary according to their interests, and we regularly offer taster sessions to develop new interests. Poetry, graffiti art, singing, visual art, circus skills, writing, computer games, dancing and writing have all been important features of the work the groups engage with. Many participants find meaningful emotional outlets through their creativity and new ways to express themselves. One of our participants wrote a book of poetry that we published, and 2 of her poems were then set to music and projected at the Blink Digital Arts Festival in Conwy onto the castle. This was the first time that her mum had seen her poetry, and it was really a pivotal moment of change and understanding for them both. We found that young people grow in confidence as they try new skills, often alongside the leaders who are also experiencing something new and who aren't afraid to give anything a go. Laughter is an essential part of what we do, and you can hear it in all of our sessions. Whilst undertaking their creative activities, the young people make friends, share and grow. Peer mentoring has become incredibly important in the group. At every session, you will find young people supporting each other, sharing challenges, experiences and approaches that they have found useful to cope with their difficulties. The leaders help facilitate this, and they're always on hand should a young person need more support. Our 3 leaders are creative practitioners who have an acute awareness of and training in mental health and well-being. They're supported by a social services worker at every session. This partnership's proved immensely valuable in terms of supporting the leaders and linking into social services where we need to. And CAMS also give us support and guidance on a very regular basis. So alongside our sessions at Venue Cymru, we encourage participants to join in at regular events. The annual Christmas meal and pantomime has become a highlight, as has regular trips to participate at our festival take part, and also visits to the Welsh National Opera with support from the opera staff. So for participants who really couldn't even walk into the room on their first session, this is a huge stride forwards. At the beginning of each session, we ask participants to complete a quick personal UCAMS mood chart. It's a very, very quick 5-question scoring chart. And we have seen sustained improvements in scores across the length of the project. So we may see peaks and troughs from participants as life events happen, but overall we see an increase in their mood, which is fantastic. And also, if we happen to notice that scores are dropping, we are able to alert CAMS and social services quickly to ensure early intervention. We're very clear that the ultimate success for Create is that the participant no longer needs us. But along the way, we're happy to see little and big steps. Participants having the confidence to go to the cinema, to have a communication breakthrough, to improve their school attendance, they're all good outcomes. Feedback from participants and carers and also the mental health practitioners have been fantastic. But I think this quote I've put on the screen now absolutely sums it up. I did something this evening I thought I'd never do. I made a friend. We have been continuing throughout the pandemic period. We've been continuing online, and this evening, very exciting, for the first time since March, the group are meeting up together outside, and they are all extremely excited to be getting back together again. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody's got them later. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, nice to see you again.
Sorry about that, don't know how I did that.
And I'm very excited that you're going to have an in-person session this evening. Congratulations. So we've come to the end of our 5 presentations, and now is the time for our questions and answers. There are some questions that have popped into the Q&A box. But before we move to those, they're fairly specific. I wanted to start with a more general conversation, which is for anybody in the group. From your perspective as arts and mental health practitioners, what is your sense of the pressures that children and young people are under at the moment? And are you finding a greater demand in your services?
I think for us, it's been really interesting through lockdown, because we wanted to really consult with young people through their experiences of lockdown. We obviously had, for some young people, it was much worse living in home situations which weren't ideal. We had a drop off of some of our young people that the pressures of school weren't there, so they felt less pressured. So I think school is a huge pressure for our young people. And I think the transitions are always difficult, so we're really mindful of them going back to school, how a school is going to play it. Are there going to be additional pressures to catch up? So I think for us, along with lots of the other kind of societal pressures, I mean, in Manchester we've got 50% of young people living in poverty. Access to youth provision is limited. You know, you have to have the agency and the finances and the support to access them. So I think those are a tremendous pressure, and I'm really disheartened when lots of people are worried about the future. And I think I don't know what, so we've done a bit of a support about doing utopian futures, or trying to put a message out for the future, which is our new campaign, because they just feel a very uncertain future. They're told to work hard, but then they're not sure what they're going to go into or what the situation's going to be like. They know education's expensive, so they know that's the pressures, and that's only for certain young people. So I think more than ever, I think that just the knowledge of worldwide issues is huge, along with kind of more local pressures as well. So I think that's where our young people are really feeling it.
We have certainly had some issues with our young people because their home lives have been contributory factors to their mental health difficulties in some cases, not all. There's definitely been an increase in referrals that are being reported to schools and to ourselves. So I think it's been a really very, very difficult time for a lot of young people, and I think we need to be aware of that, and we need to be thinking of ways that we can support them. I'm sure Helen would have more knowledge on that from her CAMS background.
I think we're anticipating a 20% increase in referrals. Sadly, I don't think we're having a 20% increase in resources, but yeah, so it's going to have a massive impact in terms of keeping up. We've continued to work throughout the pandemic. On the whole, it's been virtual, phone, Skype, etc., go-to meetings with young people, but we've had clinics open throughout, so anyone who's very vulnerable or very risky, needed weighing or whatever, or health checks, that's all been made available. So we have continued to see young people, but yes, we are expecting a significant increase, and which is going to be challenging because we can only have so many people in our clinic spaces. And whilst we're getting good feedback from young people about the different forums, platforms that we're connecting with them, you can't, face-to-face is just, I think you can't beat face-to-face for a lot of issues and for a lot of young people.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go to one of the questions in the Q&A box, which was from Catherine Taylor. I'll attempt to read it out. Morning, it was great to hear more about ICE. This is Kat, the GM from iThrive, and I manage an arts and culture mental health programme. I would like to ask whether there are ROMs collected for this work or any other evaluation undertaken. And do you know how the commissioners have taken interest in it, or if they intend to extend this work further?
So for those people that aren't familiar, ROMs are routine outcome measures, which is just obviously assessing about change. Yeah, we have throughout the years have done various different evaluation forms. Currently, we're doing a start of project and end of project questionnaire, which is particularly targeting things like connectivity, confidence, concentration, fun and relaxation, self-esteem, those kinds of things, and actually the taking part. So that's a before and after the whole project. And then session by session, we do a kind of more subjective stuff around what you've learned, what you'll take from it. It's the kind of I will from now on, and I can now do those kinds of things on a session by session basis. So that gives us a bit of a mixed feedback. And we've also had interviews, so kind of one-on-one by the evaluator, sitting down with young people and getting that kind of feedback. In terms of the commissioners, most of them on the whole have been very positive. They tend to come to, we always have representation at our end of year celebration event from senior commissioners, and they're very enthusiastic about the work. And actually year one, it was our commissioners that match funded the Arts Council money. And I know whilst they're not able to provide ongoing funding because of constraints, all they've said to me is how passionately they feel about wanting it to continue, because they just have been so impressed by it. So they want it to continue, but they're hoping that we can find funding. Amy, I don't know if you want to add to that.
In terms of the evaluation, I think you've pretty much covered it. Alongside that, obviously it's worth saying that the project is externally evaluated, so every year we recruit for an evaluator. We also collect artist journals, so we do artist feedback, and the evaluator conducts interviews with them as well. Yeah, and like you say, it's mainly the baseline questionnaires and stuff in session. But we also use, of course, qualitatively the art as feedback as well, because I think that's the kind of the really important thing in those sessions.
on mute, thank you. There are a number of questions in the Q&A about evaluation and about the evaluation frameworks that you use, but also a sense of how methods that people are using to isolate the impacts of the arts and the creative work that they're doing from other support and interventions that the young people might be receiving as well. Does anyone have any thoughts that they'd like to share?
I think it's a tricky one. I mean, I've worked for charities for years, and every charity I've been to has had a kind of graveyard of a file of, they're constantly updating their evaluations or going through a change. It's really difficult. The I Thrive model is trying to do something that would be used throughout Greater Manchester, and it basically has WEMWebs and ROMs in there, because that's what they need, something evidence-based that the medical staff would understand, and then it's kind of goal setting. But they're looking to have that as I say, we're piloting Manchester, and I think they'd look to push it kind of nationally, and it would give us one. It's really tricky, you know. We do music projects, and you feel sometimes asking about the mental health. You know, one young person said to me, "It's just a music project. I just want to do music," you know. So why are they? You know, it's an odd. I'd love art and access to creativity to be a right, and then we wouldn't have to keep proving it, because we really know that it works. And I think it's sometimes a bit of a, you know, I'm really keen on open access youth provision, and I think sometimes it's almost a kind of capitalist agreement that you can come here and it is free, but you have to fill in a form. And I think young people are getting more used to filling forms in, and I think there's a slight worry about that. But yeah, we need to hopefully get past that and you know, and see it as important. It's just vitally important. It's another way to communicate. You know, we've had young people receiving CBT for months and months and kind of staying on the same level. They did a movement project with company Chameleon in Manchester, and their response went hugely up. So we know it works. You know, that's the closer we get to that agreement would be great. But yeah, it's a constant thing. Yeah.
I agree with you, Rod. You feel like you're constantly having to justify things, don't you? Even though there is so much evidence out there. But for our project, I mentioned the meal being really important, and that's one of the ways we evidence that the young people sit around the table and they talk about what they've done. And then also, so we capture some of that in our case studies. But also when they're actually doing their creativity, they tend to speak more. I think, you know, if you're drawing or making some music with somebody, you tend to speak a bit more. It's like going on a walk. That's another place where it happens. So again, the leaders capture that information. And the other thing that we're aware of is we have a lot of disclosures in our group, and it tends to come out of them sitting around talking whilst they're doing something else. Yeah. So obviously we make sure that we know what we do in those situations. That's why the CAMS and the social services links are so key. So I think there's a lot of soft evidence there, but you go back through all the kind of university and the academic studies, it's all there for you, isn't it, really?
And I think we've got to see ourselves as that anecdotal stuff is huge, isn't it? Those notices, those changes we notice, and it's valuing us as workers that is important, you know, that someone didn't speak for 3 weeks and now they're speaking, or now they showed the work. That's huge. There's so much stuff that young person's gone through to be vulnerable enough to show a piece of artwork, you know, and that's, you know, so it's huge within that.
I think it's really important as well to just make sure that you're consulting with other people that are working with that young person, because, you know, the key workers, the occupational therapists, they'll be able to see the impact that your specific provision is having as well. So getting them on board and getting them valuing what you do, I think is crucial to kind of isolating what impact you're actually having from your project.
Yeah.
It is a challenge at times when clinicians are often, you know, their medical model, their scientists, to then think in a kind of creative, artistic way. That's quite a challenge, and you're having to kind of convince people. But you get people in the room, and you can convince people.
Yeah, and if I could just say that I agree with everything, but something we really noticed with evaluation very quickly was that when we were given evaluations, to carry out with young people, and they were written by people who didn't have any background in mental health. We found the evaluation questions hugely triggering. So we really had to manage that hugely carefully. And in fact, we pushed against it, obviously, for the welfare of young people. But we learned very quickly early on in mental health and youth arts work with that the evaluations, these baseline evaluations, that whilst it might be appropriate for an adult group to go on and to click and say, here's how I feel about this or that in fact we needed to facilitate that person to person. So whilst the young person was still doing the clicking through the baselines before and after, it had to be facilitated, supported. It was part of the process. And it wasn't part of the process that we were ever given a mechanism to actually say, like, this in some way was an opportunity to actually build relationships and add it to the overall experience that the artist mental health practitioners had when they were working with young people. Because it was just seen as a separate thing, something that existed separately, and it's not separate. It doesn't have to be separate, but it has to be managed with care and carefulness. And the second and only other point on evaluation is that it's our biggest stressor. I've been asked a question here today, do we have a longitude evaluation on our work? So I guess with our suicide prevention work, it's been around for a long time. So we have had an opportunity to carry out a longer term impact evaluation with Fresh Young Artists. The model has been up and running for 2 years, whilst the practice has been there for an aeon, but the model's been there for 2 years. So we haven't had that same opportunity. However, because we're funded project by project by project, and each project will have its own investment in evaluation, it's very, very financially exhausting for us to constantly have to really look at, we would love to be doing longitude evaluations. We'd love to take all of our short-term projects, cluster the resource and create one great thing that will work. So there's things in the mechanisms through which we're getting our funding, our resources to make this project happening, that's actually making it impossible for us to evidence base in the way that we could and the way that we can, but we just don't have the resources. So it's two really important points for evaluation from us.
Yeah, I think that point about, sorry, Vicky, I was just going to say that the point about having the right evaluation for the right group is so important. And some of the feedback we had from our participants was that they spend a lot of their lives filling in questionnaires in medical settings or at school, and they just don't want to go into another setting and have to sit and start ticking things and thinking about, thinking deeply about stuff. So we have 5 questions. It's a 5-centimetre rule. How are you feeling today? How's school been this week? They do 5 questions at the beginning. The leaders do them as well, and that's it. So there's part of me that really wants to go into in depth with, what's happening and how's it improving. And there's another part of me that understands that one of the reasons it's successful is because those young people don't feel pressured when they arrive at the group.
Yeah,
I think I take all that on board, but I think we just to some extent have to accept this is the way of the world. This, it is all about proving an evidence base. And whilst it might feel clunky setting in the arts world, it's just funding won't happen. People won't support it. These things will not happen unless we have that bit back.
I think we think it's so much better to do it creatively. We use things like mixing desks for them to move the scales on, or a keyboard. And yes, we might write it down on a form, but the young people often don't see that form at all. It's just a means to an end so we can record it. And I think that often gets much more positive involvement from the young people if they're doing it creatively, because they kind of find it a bit more fun, and it leads to lots of discussions as well. And it's not just sitting down, let's tick a box. That's what we do, and I think that's really helped us anyway.
I think there is a really interesting conversation and piece of work around creative alternatives to evaluation that will be seen as credible and as robust as the questions and the tick boxes. I wanted to jump into another question in the Q&A. which was about the advice that you'd give people in regards to supporting young people moving between child and adult mental health services.
I think I mentioned in my presentation that, you know, aiding that transition between the services is really important, because there can be a lot up in the air. The young people might have really built a relationship with their support worker, and then to move to adult services, which could be very different. In Birmingham, it could even be a different provider completely. So the way that we do it is that we have consistency, that we've got projects that they can move on to. So if everything else is changing in their life, then at least they know us, and a lot of our musical leaders are the same throughout the project, so they'll have links with people throughout, so we can be that consistent force. But it is a very difficult time, and that's just the way that we manage it. We try and always have funding that they can go on to another programme and have that consistent stability with us if everything else is changing.
Yeah, I mean, most areas there'll be a different provider that does CAMHS and that does adult mental health, and whoever's asked the question, I would be encouraging them to check the transition policies that should be sitting between CAMHS and adult mental health. There should be a transition protocol that you can check the pathway and how that's managed.
Excellent. Okay. Another question that has popped up is around the support of artists and creative practitioners in their own mental health and well-being. We've talked a lot about the challenges of providing support to young people, but how do we look after the practitioners in this sector as well? And I think there is another question about, is there a network for practitioners specifically who work with children and young people?
The first question about how do we protect the creative practitioners, I think is absolutely crucial. We, as I mentioned, we have a lot of disclosures. If our creative practitioners went into that cold without some experience and some training, they could get things very wrong for the young person, but they could also go home and really suffer themselves. So that's something where we have our friendly CAMHS practitioner who's on hand all the time. The chair of our charity is available all the time. I'm available. We have steering group meetings. We check in with people. We make sure they know that if they are feeling uncomfortable or have had a difficult conversation, to come and talk to us. But I think that's a really good question, and it's so important to get that right at the beginning of the project.
It's the same for us in with the ICE project, that every year all the artists, it's an expectation that they have to attend a day's training, which is led by clinicians from our service on all the basics that they need to know, and that covers safeguarding and disclosures and risk and all of it. And we have an ongoing rapport that means that people can come and share with us anything, and we can talk it through and take any action that's required. I don't know if Amy, you want to add anything to that?
I think it's much like Sarah was saying around just making sure that you're continually available for artists to discuss those concerns. I always encourage artists to do session debriefs with me, and like I say, there's the huge benefit of having CAMHS as an equal partner on the project, that we can refer any concerns to CAMHS and provide additional training if people feel like they need it. And there's also something around the recruitment of artists and making sure that they are comfortable with doing this work, and that they are experienced in that before we start a project.
Yeah, I would add that the recruitment is vital. You really have to recruit experienced artists. If you're working with new artists, you have to support them into role. We recognise the impact of secondary trauma, so we need to mitigate for that. We have to presume that the shorter the intervention, so the less time that an artist is working with a young person, actually they have an increased vulnerability, and we have to address that. And that's even more challenging because often in our shorter projects, there's less resources once again to actually be able to offer that support. But that's the artist that we would be most concerned about, because that's the artist that isn't in a relationship over a very long time with us. So cultivating, developing relationships with our artists, so that it's not just come and do this one day training and you've got what you need, but it's like you need to do that one day training, but we need to be in relationship with you, talking with you, debriefing with you after your sessions. You need to feel safe with us, and we need to offer you as an organisation everything that we're asking you to offer the young people that you're working with, because this is the cycles of trauma, and if we are to break it, we can't just ask you to go out and support young people to break their cycles without supporting you to break your cycles. So supervision is a requirement, a really important one, and getting their feedback. And artists have told us that they have felt really, really good, because we're one of the few organisations here that they have worked with who, after the project has gone back to them and said, we have gotten feedback from parents, from social workers, from foster carers, from teachers, and here's the difference that your work is making. Because, you know, when they finish with that programme, that's them effectively, in employment terms, often gone. But when you go back to them, that helps them kind of like reprocess some of what has come up for them in the time since the programme ended, and that's really important. So there's a lot of work that's really important in terms of mitigating secondary trauma, we feel, in terms of our artists and our practitioners.
Yeah, and I just want to add as well, just that we train all of our music leaders in mental health first aid. It's a 2-day course, and we'd massively recommend it to anybody, because all of our artists have fed back that it's probably the best training they've ever done, because it not only looks at how you deal with different situations, but looking at your own mental health and recognising when there are issues. And just the other question about a network for practitioners working specifically with young people, there is the Youth Music network, which is a national network that people can join for free, and that's where often people share practice and space. It's not specific to mental health, although Youth Music do largely fund or they mainly fund projects for vulnerable young people and disadvantaged young people, so that's perhaps worth looking at.
Good. Rod,
Just one other thing I would add from Hampshire Camps is we've taken a couple of chances with some groups and gone out and done a slightly more challenging, risky projects, and such as in eating disorders. And when that's been the case, we've actually had clinical staff in the whole time for those sessions in order to manage any issues that might come up.
Good. Rod, I think you were trying to add something as well.
No, that's all. That is what we do as well. Yeah, we do have a mental health practitioner in all sessions as well. That's something we've developed over the last year, so they're there. But yeah, I think that's really crucial what we're all doing.
We are coming to the end of the question, but I'd like to chuck in just one last question, which I'm sure is opening a big can of worms, but it'd be great if we could get a brief answer on this from all of our presenters today. How would you like to see the field of arts and creativity for children and young people with mental health difficulties develop beyond your own programme and projects?
I think for us, it's access. I think we recognise as a charity that young people, lots of young people in our communities or around Greater Manchester don't get access to mental health support. We have waiting lists. We don't particularly advertise the services that 42nd Street does, and they probably don't get access to arts activities. So we feel that we can do a bit of both, going into communities and working with them. But I think it is access. I think so many young people come to us and say, oh, I used to enjoy art at school. It's a bit of freedom in the day, but now it's become very technical. It's another aspect of their lives that's judged, really. So I think for us, it's just to embed it much more in as a free kind of activity. It's, you know, I've unpicked it since moving into 42nd Street about how many levels. I think the general public or professionals don't understand all the different levels it works at, because it works in so many different ones. So I think it's a bit of an opening up, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because arts is imbued with class, and you know, there's snobbery in the arts, and there's finance, and it really can be a really complex thing to try and bring forward, but I think we need to kind of unpick it much more in terms of what it actually does. We're looking at action art. Could you have a art form that feels good just to do? So we've got an intern downstairs throwing water bombs at a wall full of paint. We're looking at mindfulness and the process of watercolour and unpicking all that. I think we can have much more of a deeper conversation rather than saying, you know, it's just art and then people take off from that what they think it is. So.
Thank you, Rod.
Sorry, I think I'd like to pick up on what Helen said earlier about clinicians and their understanding and views about the work that we do. We've seen today lots of evidence of how creative arts makes a huge difference. So I think money could be well spent on sharing that information and with clinicians more. And whenever I've spoken to a mental health practitioner, they've always been really open to the arts. They've always been really enthusiastic about it, but they are worked beyond belief. They've got too much on, they've got too many case studies, they don't have the mental headspace to take on the fact that there's this thing that might help. So I would love to see some work by organisations, by the government to prove, not to prove because I think we've already done that, but to publicise this more and maybe to have it as something that could be prescribed or something that could be working alongside the work that CAMS, the great work that CAMS are doing.
I think we just more joined up thinking, easy ways to find out what's happening for parents or young people themselves, if they know that they're struggling. I think, you know, it's great to hear about all these projects today, and I've not heard of them before, the Bearing project, the publication. So I think if there's somewhere that can collate all those ideas and great work, then people will have more of an idea of what's out there and what can help their child.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's definitely about as well developing a shared language between arts practitioners and clinicians. I think that's again why our partnership works, because actually I get to have those conversations in language I understand with Helen, and she feeds that back to me in language that clinicians will understand. And actually I think that that's really important. I think that knowledge can be shared, and yeah, just again, as Rod says, more access.
And Anya, I'm going to come to you.
Okay, so for me, I would love to see that the arts almost doesn't have its sector, dare I say this, but I would love to see the integration of arts, like I love to see the integration of all modalities and ways of being in relationship with one another. So I would love to not see the arts siphoned off as, oh, you're in your teacher training, so now you're going to do your arts training, and how we, you know, I would love to see it integrated. I'd love to see arts not seen as the soft option, but the courageous and brave choice, because people who dare to go there, go deep and do big work. I would like for that to be acknowledged and celebrated. Yeah, and I would like, I guess, just to see access, just to see more access, easier access, less project-based access, and real validation of like the contribution that arts is making, but always has made. And, you know, I believe it won't go away because it's not a choice. It's in our bones. We don't get to choose it. It's part of us. So yeah, that's I guess where I would like to see it in the big picture.
Thank you. As ever, we have run out of time, but it's a fantastic idea to leave on the arts as not the soft option, but the courageous choice. I'd really like to thank all of our contributors today and the contributors to the publication. I'd love to thank Harriet for doing the brilliant work of compiling all of those case studies and organising the session today. And thank you to Karen Pritchard, who's been providing us with captions today. If you've not had a chance to access a copy of Creatively Minded and Young yet, it can be downloaded as a PDF from the Bearing Foundation website. So please head over there and get yourself a copy. And thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.